Hi everyone, my name is Fly. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and today I'm going to show you how to pull up a portrait. Now if you guys are new to tattoo, stay in because I'm about to start a new series where I show my setup, I show my techniques, and I show everything that I do in between to pull up a tattoo. So if you guys know portraits, you need a face for it, and if you guys want to tattoo a face, you need a couple of techniques to fit and make a portrait. So the first things that we're gonna do is to find a face. For today, we're gonna use a similar face like this one. By tattooing a portrait, I would say that we can subdivide portraits in 4 categories. The first one being the hyper-realistic, that color tattoos that have all the follicles, the hair, all the defects on the skin and everything. The second one, I would say the photorealistic, like a photo that is a 4K photo. You can see many details, is not hyper realistic, but they have all the details inside so you can see them. The third one, I would say, is like a photo from the 50s, from the 60s. It's a black and white photo, and there the portrait doesn't have so much details, but you can already distinguish the person that is in there. You can see who it is. The fourth one, I would say, is anime, cartoon. There are a lot of artists that pick up a photo, take a face, and then they adapt, they use their style or turn it into anime, you know, those cartoons and everything. So for today, we're going to use the third one. We're going to go by the photos that are from the 60s, 50s, and they are black and gray. We're going to use lines and most of it shading. So we're going to use stipple shading, cross shading. The ink that we're going to use today is black ink, and the needle we're going to use today is a 3RL. We're going to use this and tattoo on fake skin. So guys, I'm going to change the shot and I'm going to show you from the beginning to the end how I did it and what you need. So guys, I'll see you in a second. So guys, here we are in another shot in another angle on my table, and the first things you want to do is to clean very well the fake skin. You want to make sure that there are no grease, there is no dirt or anything that can mess up with your stencil, and you really want to get that skin completely clean. So the best way to do this is using isopropanol alcohol 96% if you guys have it. Otherwise you can use other ones with 70% because we really need the skin to be clean. And then we're gonna apply our green card. Now I only use green card on fake skin because it is a little easy to dry instead of the other solutions that I have that are liquid, and they don't dry as fast on fake skin, so I only use this on fake skin. Make sure you don't use it on real skin because it won't work as good as on fake skin. Then apply just an enough amount so you have about 0.5 millimeters on the surface. And then we get our stencil. You want to separate the stencil from the stencil sheet, the chemical part of it. You only want to keep the paper part. You guys can watch it, it's satisfying to peel this. Then we got our image. I prepared the image on Photoshop. I just used the filters on Photoshop and the photocopy filter on Photoshop, which is very easy and just makes stencils instantly. So guys, don't pay for apps. If you guys have Photoshop, you guys can do this very fast. It may not have the proper quality, has a handmade stencil, but it is usable and you guys can do it too very fast. So you try and apply the stencil above the stencil solution. In this case it was a green card, the stencil spit stick. There are spit sticks too, like those deodorants, they would work too, but the green card is a bit better, although it is not the best mark, the best brand out there, but it is pretty good. So you want to apply the stencil, you want to press each line against the skin. You'll notice that the paper is going to get a bit fatty, so you want to see that the paper is absorbing the stencil solution. You know that is ready. After this, you want to dry out your stencil because it is very important if you guys are using fake skin too and tattooing on fake skin. Very important that you guys dry out the stencil, otherwise it will come off or it will come right off. So you guys really need to dry it out. It is the best way to keep the stencil longer here on fake skin because fake skin can be a bit tricky to work with. So just make sure you dry it out. You can use a blow machine like I have. This is a hot gun machine. You could also use a blow dryer. I think that's the name they call it. Or is a heat gun. In my case it is a heat gun. You can use it in 80 degrees and then apply for some seconds and you should be good to go. Now if your stencil doesn't dry as fast, just let it stay for 20-30 minutes and then it should be ready. After this you just want to start tattooing. You get your ink, you get your Vaseline, you get your gloves, and you will be ready to start tattooing. In my machine I will be using the needles 3RL from Dragon Pastel. My tattoo machine is the Yilong F3 with a 4.5 stroke. It is an adjustable stroke, and today I'm about to use 8.8 volts. So this may vary. I like to use it on 8.8, 8.5 for some lines and some shading. I will then go a bit down. I could also use 9 volts. I wouldn't recommend going up or going higher than this because then you will have too much speed on the needle and it may mess up with your lines. This always depends with your hand speed. If you guys are a little bit slower, you can also slow down your machine so you can go with a lower voltage. So at the beginning I'm about to trace the more important lines right here, the ones that are very dark on the stencil, and then I'm about to start from the bottom, then going up. This is a rule. If you guys don't want to mess up your stencil, you should start from the bottom up and from the right to the left so you don't smudge everything. And of course, depending on your stencil primer, you really guys want to take this in consideration. So you're gonna use the 3RL for all this tattoo, and we're gonna trace all the lines first, not big mark lines, but just enough so we can still see it after. So just some tracing the most principal lines in here, and then we're gonna start shading. For the shading I'm still gonna use a pure black, and then when I need some lighter areas I will then dilute either with a still water or a diluting solution that you guys can have. Dynamic has this too. For the ink I'm also using dynamic black, and because I live in Europe I need to use the new dynamic black that they have. Before I used the dynamic triple black, but now it's forbidden to use it because European laws, and they were not vegan. So the new dynamic ink is totally vegan. It is a bit thinner and it isn't as black as the normal one or even the triple black. It is a bit of a difference, but it also flows better on my machine. If you guys are still having problems with the ink flowing on your machine, you can just add 2 or 3 drops of diluted water or distilled water and a diluting solution. This will most probably help. Sometimes if you have a really thick ink, you may have problems with your machine or your needle, or you can have everything splattered because the machine is splattered a bunch of ink above the fake skin. And if you guys don't want that, that is annoying. Just know that is a small trick. You guys can actually just dilute the ink and then it will flow much better on your machine. So here I am doing the lines around the neck, around the t-shirt that it has, or this shirt actually. Then I'm about to create some texture, just marking the lines that are needed, and then I'm gonna start shading where the parts that are really dark. I'll do just some shading because I want to get those black parts really noticing. I want them to be noticed, so I'm about to do it around the areas that need more shading. You may want to press your needle deeper if you want to get that deeper dark shading, and if you want to have a lighter shading you can still use some stipple shading or some pendulum motion, and then you guys can have a lighter effect depending on your hand speed of course, and depending on your skill. You guys can achieve both shading results with the same needle. So in here I'm about to do the teeth first because I think this is an area that really needs attention, and if you mess up the teeth or the eyes, I think the whole tattoo will be completely different. So it's like the teeth, the eyes and the nose really need to be taken in consideration when doing a face tattoo or portrait, because if you mess up any of these elements, then the tattoo won't be the same. So I really take my time, and I won't do deep lines here on the teeth or on the teeth. I would just go light, and then even the areas, I wouldn't trace completely the teeth, okay? You don't want each tooth to be completely dark. You don't want those lines coming out. You don't want to do an outline here. What you want to do is just to slightly get some lines in there. So what I can say is that you don't want them to be deep black, you just want it like slightly gray. You could also use another type of ink right here. So again, as I said, some diluting ink, some 50% ink. If you guys are afraid that you can mess it up in the teeth part, you can use a slightly lighter shading of black or even gray. Then on the extremities of the mouth, I want to use again full black, because in my picture it is full black. Here on the smile, you want to take consideration about all the lines in the face. Sometimes we do an imaginary image of what we are seeing, because we look so much into the picture that we forget that the picture, it isn't as we imagine it to be. So sometimes we see lines that are deep black, but in reality in a photo they are not deep black. There are maybe some darker gray. So don't trace lines everywhere, because in a photo there are no such thing as perfect lines or deep lines. There are a bunch of points or small points, and that's why when you see those tattoos with a bunch of stipple shading, and if you see from far away, they look perfect, they look exactly like a photo, because in the photo there aren't perfect lines. So really take your time and observe if in your photo, in a reference, it is really a line that is in there, or is a kind of shading that makes you think it is a line. So go slow, don't put too much energy or too much force in one line. Go slow, do some whip shading or some stipple shading depending on the technique that you want to use, but don't press it hard. So take your time, and again, you will achieve the best of it if you don't press it, if you don't push it, because tattooing a portrait, it is something that needs focus and it needs its time, so you don't make a mistake, because one mistake could be the end of your tattoo, and you don't want that, especially if you're using pure black. If you guys make a mistake with pure black, then it will stay forever and it's not what you want. So again, I'm here in the mouth, on the lips. The upper lip is a bit darker, but not that dark, so I won't push it too much. I won't do too much black details in there. I will then come up later and do some shading. So now I'm about to do the left side, or in this case the right side of the face, and then I'm gonna go left. Always go from down to the bottom, from the bottom up, and from the right side to the left side, so you don't smudge everything. If you are a right-handed person, if you are a left-handed person and you also tattoo, then you want to do the opposite, go from the left to the right. But in this case I'm right-handed, so I'm going to go from the right to the left. Again, I'm going to use the pure black to do some details. I want to take my time. I know that this part of the face is a bit lighter than the other parts, and there are also some details that I'm noticing that are missing on my reference, so that are missing on my stencil, because I'm watching my reference on my phone. It is near me, and I can see that some details are not here. That's what it happens sometimes, and you have to adapt and work with it. That's why hand-drawn references or hand-drawn stencils are better than the ones you do on Photoshop, or let's say on Procreate. If you guys do it yourself and you have the experience, you will know which parts of a photo you guys can pick up, and you know they will be important later on. So for here, I'm about to do the basic lines on the nose, tattooing the nose. Then I know that under the nose there will be a big black spot, but at the beginning I don't want to make it fully black. I just want to do some shading, because at the end we can correct if anything isn't the right value or the right shading, the right shades, then I can correct it. So at the beginning we only want to get a rough image in here. We don't want to do all the details at the beginning, especially if you start doing all the details and all the lines in pure black, then at the end you may have a really dark image. The same has happened in my image on the left. You can see Eminem right there. I start doing from the bottom up, and then I kinda messed up in his face. Actually I did that at the end because I wanted to do a bit of darker tones, because I have finished that and I said okay, this maybe looks too light. Then I use a 75% black, but then by using the 75% black I ended up messing everything because it was too much. So here on the eyebrows, I'm about to do the eyebrows and try to use the movement into my favor. If you guys go into the YouTube and search for micro needling, you know those things that the women do in your eyebrows, they tattoo the eyebrows. You guys can train that, and then in every tattoo that you do, you will be able to do the eyebrows much easier. So again, another part that I want to take time on are the eyes. You really want to do the eyes perfectly, or otherwise your tattoo will look weird. If you guys mess up the eyeballs on the eye or the iris, then you may have a ruined tattoo. So you really want to take time and do the eyes as best as you can. Again, you really need to focus in here. I wouldn't do so much detail for now, so I only do the basic lines. There are some other parts here under the eye that also need attention. Sometimes my stencils don't show everything that it's in there, so you'll have to adapt a bit and then do extra details later. So I'm about to do some lines here. The upper part of the eye, the bottom part of the eye, they have those small lines that you usually can't see, but they look good if you add them up just a little bit. Again, not too much. We need to do this in both sides of the eye, so I wouldn't exaggerate already in the beginning. I wouldn't add that much details, because later on you may have one eye with many details and the other one without. So we'll just try and balance the image. We don't want some parts to be too much dark than others, so just slightly do some shading right here, and then I would go and do the other part. Again, at the beginning of the tattoo you really want to get the most important details traced. This of course will depend on your image. My image is small, so I'm afraid that I may end up smudging everything, and of course I'm working on fake skin, and this tattoo stencil primer isn't the best. On real skin I have a really good product that doesn't go away by any means. Even after the tattoo is done, it doesn't go away, so I'm not so much afraid of losing details. But in here I really want to focus on the most important lines first, and then I'll work on the shading, and I will start with the darker shading, and then at the end I will then try to lower the shades of gray, and then I will just try to add the last details only at the end to balance everything. Now again, here on the eye, I want to make the eye look the same as the other eye. I wouldn't add too much detail yet. I really want to let that shine here on the iris. In there I really want to make it noticeable, because it adds another level of detail to the image. Of course, here on the eyelashes, really want to add the eyelashes because my reference has eyelashes, but the stencil that I printed, it doesn't have that much detail, so I really have to focus on my reference too. Here under the eye, once again, don't go too harsh on it, don't go too dark. And then here on the nose, there is a big black part on my reference, but I'm about to do just some shading at the beginning. Always when you're shading, you also want to shade, for example, if your face is curved, depending on the place, of course, on the face. If there is a curved place, you want to start shading in a curved motion. So for example, if you're tattooing an apple or an egg, and they are of course curved objects, then you want to do the shading in a curved motion in the same way you would do curved lines, but don't press too much because you're still shading, so just try to do those curved shadings in a curved motion. So let's say you want to shade and try to give that emotion, that feeling there is something in there. The object is not just a plain thing, it's not a geometry. Then you want to get those lines or those shading lines in a round form. So again, here for the eyebrows, I want to start doing the eyebrows in a motion like I said before, in the same way you would do the micro needling. I also can watch my reference and then do the eyebrows in the same way I did before, in the same direction, because that's how they look. You don't want to do them just straight lines because the hair is never straight. You can also add some imperfections in there and then add some shading. So here under the eye he has some wrinkles right there, so I'm just trying to really slightly add some details because again, you don't want to use too much black in here, you just want to go slowly right there. Then I'm coming back to the nose, then some more wrinkles right here on the face while he's smiling, again on the nose, adding the shading that is left. So then I'm about to come back to the lips, again adding a little bit of shading so that I can know, okay, this part of the lip is darker than the upper part. Then I'm adding a bit of shading because the lips are also round, and if the light is hitting from the upside down, then you know that the upper part will be lighter than the bottom. Again, here in the face, got the ears. Unfortunately, here on the ears, I didn't have so much detail as my reference. The stencil that I printed also doesn't have all the information because this part was really dark and black and had a lot of hair, and the stencil that I produced on Photoshop, it didn't print much. Sometimes the stencil in Photoshop also prints in gray, and you need to mess up with the levels. If you guys know what the levels are in Photoshop, that's when you choose the blacks and grays that you guys want to have and to show. But then once I print it, because I use one of those thermal printers, once I print it, the values, they are a bit gray, they don't get printed because the thermal printers only print the darker spots. That's why some of the details are missing, because they were in between the deep blacks and the grays, and then they just get lost, I mean between the blacks and the whites. The whites don't get printed and the grays also don't, and that's a shame. That's why some of those printers, they use those cartridges with stencil ink. They are actually very nice, and I may get one in the future, but for now I use this printer that I have, and it's wireless with battery, so I think I'm gonna stick with her for now, and later on I will change to someone else once I start doing some more realistic portraits. Now here in the hair, again, the hair is a kind of easy thing to do because the hair is all the time a bit messy, and you don't really need to take that much focus in the hair. Of course, if you take more time, it will look even better, but again, on a tattoo of this size, you don't want to over exaggerate on details, so the hair isn't that what the people were gonna look for. People mostly look to the eyes, nose and smile. That's the most important part. here in the air I even smudge a bit of the stencil primer, which is really annoying, but we need to work it out. So I'm about to put some details right here that I can see on my reference before they get erased. It's really annoying when this happens, but it happens and you really need to learn how to work with it. So I'm about to put the details in here that I think that are important, and later on I'll come back and draw the rest that I think it will fit on the image. So again, in the hair, as I said, you don't need to make it perfect, but you also want to keep in motion all the lines that the hair has to bring some life to it. You don't want to do it in straight lines because the hair is not straight, and you also don't want to do the hair perfectly. So let's say if the hair of the person is falling down, you may want to add some little curves because it will make it more realistic. And if in the photo the hair is just all messy, then try to do some parts of it messy, because it will be good and will look good on the final tattoo. So again, here on the hair I'm gonna do a bunch of lines, black lines first to outline all the hair parts that are the biggest one, the most noticeable, and then I'm about to shade too. So guys, check it out and then I'll come back in a minute. So after getting all the details here on the hair, or the most important part of them, we want to start and having some fun here on the face. So we're going to start by shading the darker parts of the face. You can see here on the stencil that these parts are very dark. Also, I like to get that shine on the face. You really want to see the light that is on your image, where the light is shining, so you can get the reflection on the edges, because some edges will be dark but some edges will have a little lighter part, so you really want to get them like with the shining effect. Then the other parts that are a bit darker here on the face, you want to get them a bit darker, so just start shading with the pendulum motion, always steeple shading in here, the first with some smooth and light shading tips in here, and later on we'll then press a bit harder. So first we really just want to get those lines, or no lines but the shape in there, because you don't want to get lines anywhere when you're shading. You only want to get those points in there, but the movement will be in the line movement. But of course in here, either you work with your hand faster or you lower your voltage. As I'm used to work with 8.5, 8.8 voltage, I'm just using my hand movement to do the shading, always with a pendulum motion. You don't want straight lines or anything to be messed up with some extra points that may look like a line. So you'll really want to either move your hand really fast or again lower your voltage. Now if you guys are working on fake skin like me, you may get the problem that you cannot clean the fake skin, right? And one solution for this is to spray, if you guys have a little bottle spray of vegetable oil, or use another type of oil, or just some fat like coconut oil would also work. I also used it before, but it kind of becomes too much liquid and then the machine gets a bit coagulated. But you guys can use a spray bottle that you can find online, like on Amazon or eBay. They are really cheap. And then inside just put some vegetable oil. There are some different types of oil. I wouldn't matter much which type of oil you use. And then by spraying this you can clean most of the stencil very easily. It is really an amazing trick to clean any fake skin, any synthetic skin, and works wonderful. As you guys can see, it cleans everything like magic. So I would say that we are getting on the second part of that tattoo, where we already have the most important lines laid down, and now we are about to even everything. We're gonna start shading the parts that need to be darker. We're gonna start doing those mid-tones too, so the tattoo looks more uniform and doesn't look too much different from the reference. Again, I'm using some oil to get cleaned because we really want to get a clean surface in here. We really need to get all the details that we can in here. And of course, don't overwork a tattoo. So if you have spots where it is really dark, go slow. Even if you're working on fake skin, you also want to take your time, because on real skin you'll have to do the same. You can't overwork too much in the same spot because you could end up breaking the skin. Of course, on fake skin it is another story, because the ink is a bit harder to get inside in here, and you need to push a bit harder and a bit further down, which may be a bit harder or a bit difficult than it is on real skin. On real skin you will notice that the ink will stay inside of the skin much easier and much faster. So this is also to take in consideration while you're practicing on fake skin. When you're going to real skin, just take your time, because now you're working on a real person and their skin can get damaged much more fast and you can do a mistake much easier. So take your time and do the details, and always clean the skin very well before doing the next line or the next step or the next shading, because you really want to make sure you're not messing it up. So in here I'm about to do the shading on his shirt. The inside part is darker and the outside part is a bit lighter. The shirt is not plain, it has some movement, it has a shape, so I'm going to use my hand movement to create the shape on his shirt. I want to do all those imperfections in here, try to mimic the light hitting the fabric, try to do it as it looks on the reference, because I want to do a kind of realistic tattoo. I'll try to get the best result out of it. So again, try to mimic the shape of the shirt. You always want to check how the light is hitting on the reference and try to mimic that. And if you know an object is not plain, try to do a hand movement that mimics that object shape, because it will help a lot. And even if you don't see it at the beginning, later on the tattoo, it will make a difference if you keep doing that, and at the end you have a bunch of different shapes on different areas. It will make a difference and it will look much better. So here on the t-shirt from the inside, it is a very light t-shirt. It is white, so I don't want to get too much in there. I'll just try to get the shadows on the outside between the t-shirt and the shirt, because this part has almost no light hitting there and it's kind of a dark spot. So I want to take in consideration that and try to do the shadows a bit darker than the rest of the other objects, the shirt or the t-shirt. Also the neck is there. On the neck there is a shadow that goes from the bottom of the face, from the chin down to the neck, so I want to take in consideration that. I don't want to mess up the skin part. Like if you mess up on the shirt, it's kind of okay, nobody will really check it out, maybe they will notice, but it isn't that important. But if you mess up on a part of the skin, then it is another story. So you want to take your time when you're shading the most important elements of your tattoo. So here again, I want to create some shading. I want this darker part of the shading under the chin to be very dark, because that's how it look on the reference. And then there will be some more shades. The shadow will be much more significant here on the upper part than the bottom part. That's how it looks in the reference. So I'm gonna do some darker spots here. And then the neck is also round, so first I'm about to do some light shading in the opposite direction, but then later on I'm about to do some more lines accordingly to the neck shape, so in a round movement, because I want it to look round afterwards. And if you guys start working on objects or elements that have a curved shape, you want to do some curve motion like I'm doing right now, some whip shading. Also, it is also cross hatching because I'm going in two different positions, but always using a pendulum motion. Again, here under the skin is a bit lighter. Then we got the Adam seed right there on the neck. I don't know if you say that in English. So we got that part right here, the Adam apple on there. Here on the neck, we want to take care of it, so you want to go slowly in there. For now I'm gonna leave it a bit lighter than the rest, then I'm gonna do the shading on the other parts because I really want the neck to have some elements. You can also see the same kind of effect on the left on the Eminem tattoo. I want the neck to have some different parts. Sometimes you don't need this, but I like to add a bit of details in here. When I have some skin, I like to get it a bit more realistic, although sometimes it may be an overworked part, and then you need to be cautious to not overwork some details, but I think it looks a bit better if I do it, so I'm about to do a bit like that. Here again, trying to do some darker spots, always going in motion as the jawline. So I'm gonna do this line in here, not over the same line, but kind of near it, so I can add that shadow under the jawline, under the chin, so it looks like it is coming from the top and going to the bottom, going down. So here again, adding some more shading, a bit curved, because I really want to get the motion of the shading, like that motion on the hand too, to mimic the skin, how it looks. Again, here I noticed that it is a bit more darker, so I keep adding more details here on the neck, so it looks a bit more like my reference. Then I'm about to keep shading, and then I will come to you guys in a minute once again. So guys, here I'm about to tattoo the lips once again. Had some more details on the lips and on the teeth. Then here on the teeth, I really go very slow. It may look like I'm doing a straight black line, but I'm not. I'm really just adding the details very slow and very gentle in there. I don't want a big black line in there. I just want to add some small shadows that look like the teeth have a small separation, because on the image there is no black line. There is also a small gray detail. For this, again, really want to move your hand fast and really want to do the stipple technique stipple shading and whip shading, so you get the teeth lines in there without being a big black line. Only here on the extremities of the lips or on the extremity of the smile there is some dark black spots that you want to get, but otherwise I wouldn't go too much deep in here. I wouldn't go with too much force because you really want to get only the details that you need, and you don't want to over exaggerate this part, otherwise you may mess up the tattoo really bad. And this area right here is really sensitive and really important on a face tattoo, or say in a portrait. So again, after doing all the teeth, the lips, and adding some motion to it, also doing some shading here on the lower lip or the upper lip and under the lower lip, because there are going to be some shadows right there. I would then keep doing like the same movement as I did before and using that move, the curved move, on all these details. Here on the extremity, again doing some more black, there using some more black once again because it's really black on the reference that I have, but only there, not really in other place. You just want to do some more contrast and get those different values in there. Here on the upper lip, really soft. You really don't want to go too harsh on it. The right part is much softer than the left part, so I won't go too rough on it because otherwise it will just mess everything up. Then here on the lip, usually you want to go down and up. If you go in a diagonal movement is also a viable way to shade the lips because they go round up. It is like a small tube, I would say, but as a round tube that you have. You can see the lips as objects too, but don't over exaggerate, don't over add too much shadow because it could ruin the tattoo very easily. So go again soft on it, use soft shading hand movement, and then you can achieve the real values right here that you need. So for the lower lip, once again you want to take care and be very gentle in here. You really want to get that curved motion. I like to start from the bottom up. I like to get some curved lines that mimic the lips form or the lips shape, because again you don't want to mess it up, otherwise it could look completely different than what the reference is. So you really want to take your time, you really want to check your reference and really pay attention to the spots that are very dark and the spots that are lighter. And if you go too dark on one spot, then you may ruin everything. So again, first zoom in, zoom out, take your time, check your reference, check what you're doing on the tattoo. If you're seeing that something is too dark, then stop, go to other area and then come back later and maybe you can fix it. If you guys sometimes focus too much in one area, you may mess it up. So either go slow and take caution on what you're doing, or really just try to move to different areas so you don't mess something too much up. So again, in the lip, again trying to do those curve motions. I really want the lower part of the lip to have that little shadow that it has, but again it is not black, so it's just some shadowings that make it look more realistic, so you can have that little lip form, so you can see that some part of the lip is kind of shining. You have that lighter parts and then you have the darker parts. Of course the upper part or the inside part of the lower lip is also dark because it's inside of the mouth. You don't see that, so you really have to do some thinner lines or thinner shading on that part. So I wouldn't do lines, but yeah, in the line movement inside of the lip. Then under the lip there is the chin, and on the chin you have also some shadows. You don't want to overwork here either, so just go slow, do some stipple shading, use a pendulum movement and try to mimic the face that it is on your reference, try to mimic the lines on the face. Of course, not doing lines, doing stipple shading, so you guys can have that really nice smooth form or shape. You can mimic it and mimic the light too and the shadows. So once again, I'll keep shading here and then I'll come back to you guys. So here we are on the side of the face. Now I'm trying to add some more shadows to this part under the eye. Again, under the eye here is very light. You have a small shadow under the pupil right there and outside of the eye, but I wouldn't do it too dark. You also want to do the curve motion so you can mimic the face, how it reacts on the reference, and you need to check it out how your reference is. But usually all faces are kind of the same. Of course there will be difference, but the places where they have the shadows are kind of the same. So once you study portraits, once you start practicing, you will get the hang of it and you will know where and how to place some shadows. Of course you need to take patience and you need to take your time and have patience, of course, and then start shading the darker parts first and the lighter parts next, because you don't want to mess anything up. Just use curve motion, stipple shading, whip shading like in a pendulum, movement, and when you see really dark place you can do some cross shading. Just do the movements, just join them whenever you think is suitable to do so. If the part is too dark, you can add some more shading on it. If it's lighter, then I wouldn't add too much, just let it be. At the end you can kinda fix everything if you don't overwork some area. But again, I really want to get a movement from here. I really want to show that the face is not a plain object and you have all these curved shapes on the face. Of course the face is not a ball, but I really want to get that light and the shadow that is on the reference into your tattoo too. So you want to get a 3D object with different shapes. The face is just some shapes, a full group of shapes, and you want to get them not separately but together. So you really want to get both shapes or all shapes to be on the same shades or on the same level of darkness. So I'm about to add more details here on the eye, and then I'm about to show you the rest of the tattoo. So guys, I just added some more details. Now we are here on the forehead. I want to do some hand movement to mimic the forehead and the shadows that are on the forehead. Again, you don't want to go too harsh on it, really light. If you have a diluted version of your ink with a 70% black or a 50% black, you can now use it. Just try to mimic the forehead shape. Again, I have some shadows here under the hair and the right part because the hair is up and it is kind of giving a bit of shadow right here. You don't want to overwork it or over exaggerate. Really want to go subtle about it, gentle. Again, under the hair there are some more noticeable shadows and I want to give that motion in here, that the forehead is kind of round, but you don't want to go too much on it and you want to make it too much dark. So again, use curved motion, use a pendulum motion, and add only the really needed shades in here. Again, the right part is a bit darker here in the middle, it will be a bit darker, but again, I'm doing a small tattoo, so I don't want to make everything too much dark because you still need that contrast in there. So I'm gonna keep doing the shading right here, then coming under the eye. Again, under the eye is also a sensitive spot, you really want to do some curve motion. I'm using a 70% black. It is diluted, so it doesn't make too much of a dark spot right here. Again, I want to mimic the face right there. This person is smiling. I want to keep that motion that we see when someone is smiling here on the tattoo. I really want to show off that the person is smiling, so to give that illusion that the tattoo is also a photo, which it isn't. It's just a couple of techniques put together, and then while you use a couple of techniques together, you can mimic an image. So again, here on the nose is also round, so you want to go in round movements. Some part of the nose right there is a bit darker than the other one. In the middle is a bit lighter, so I want to give those round movements where they belong to. I don't go too harsh on here. It may look like it's really black here on the camera, but it isn't. It isn't that black. I'm using 70% black, and when I clean you can see that it isn't that dark, but the camera just makes it a bit darker than what it is. Again, here the shadow is coming from the upper part down, and the nose has some reflex in there because the nose usually is a bit oily place, and some people have some reflection in there. So depending on the person and on the photo or the reference, you may want to take that in consideration, always leaving some parts to be a bit lighter than others, so you can have all the contrast in there on the face and everything looks smooth. So again, here on the eye you have some more parts to have more shading on it. It is a really tiring process actually. If you want to do a portrait, you really want to keep paying attention to what you're doing, to watch how the reference is, and you really need to be someone with high level of focus, or either your stencil is really good and you don't need to look for your reference, or you're doing a detailed work. Like I said before, some artists adapt the faces to their own style. They add some elements like some letters and some extra tattoos, or some blood, or some metallic faces, like parts of the face where it's gold or metallic with some newer elements like a cyberpunk style. You can see that online a lot, or some letters that are on neon, and then they add some extra colors. And then those kind of works are easy to do because you're not really just focusing on a simple photo, because at the end a simple photo may be the most hard to actually do because everything needs to be perfect. And sometimes if you add some other work, some scars, some numbers, some letters somewhere here on that tattoo, some duct tape, some people use some duct tape, or either on the mouth or the eyes, that's the most easy thing to do, because then the face doesn't need to be completely perfect and you won't notice because some elements are distracting you. But if you're only tattooing a face or a portrait, then you may notice that you really need to do everything at least very well, otherwise it won't look the same and you end up messing up the tattoo. So here on the eyebrows, again I want to mimic the movement from heavy hair. Like I said, the micro needling that you guys can see online, just search it on YouTube and check some videos of people doing it. Those cosmetic places do it very well, and you can learn how the eyebrows movement really is, and then you can draw them much better. So right here I just added more darkness to the hair. Once again, I'm giving some extra details, some extra hairs that may be seen on the reference. You may not notice them already at the beginning, but later on I see that there are some extra tiny hairs that make up the hairstyle in the photo, so I want to mimic them and give the same movements as they have in the photo. So I'm just adding them to create an illusion that the hair is having some movement right there. Here on the face, on the outside of it, I want to add some more dark, so I can notice that the hair is getting heated by the light, and then these parts right here will look lighter than what they are, because if you don't have a back contrast or a background in here, then you wouldn't be able to see the lighter parts of the hair. Again, I want to give the mimic that the hair is not uniform, is not always moving on the same shape, because on my reference it isn't. There are hairs that are going down, and of course the head is not perfect and is not always showing the same movement. So for this, I'm about to do some hairs that are going down. Again, these hairs are noticeable on my reference, even though they are really tiny. Of course, I'm gonna do some lip shading right here just to create those tiny hairs. They may not be really noticeable, but they make a difference while you're zooming in. Again, I really want to give movement to the hair so everything looks a bit more uniform, so in correlation to the reference. So here on the side of the face, I want to get it a bit darker because I want the face to stand out, because it is a portrait and you want to make the face stand out. You want the face to be noticeable on the tattoo, and you shouldn't end with only a white background, depending on the photo of course and on the reference that you have. But if you want to make it stand out, do some shadows. Most of the professional tattoo artists that I see, they are very good doing hyper realistic tattoos. They usually do a color background like a strong green, orange, or some black background, because it is really important. And if you ever painted with oil or used oil colors to paint, then you know that you need a strong background to make a portrait stand out. That's how they did it in the Renaissance era. They used a strong black background when tattooing a portrait, or strong colors behind it, because then you can really see the difference and the face or the portrait will stand out much more. So here I'm adding some shading outside of it. I really want to get some darker spots right there where the shadows may be hitting on reality, so I want to get here a bit darker. Then the face, as you guys can see, is starting to stand more in comparison to the fake skin, so I don't want everything to be just plain white. Again, adding more shading right here where the ear is, adding some curve shading too, so it doesn't look like it's just some lines. It looks like it has some depth right there, going from the shading, the shades that are coming from the face, and going further from the face, or a bit in the opposite direction from the face, kind of giving an aura thing to the tattoo. Of course, making it look like where the tattoo is a bit darker, and then going lighter to the outside. Not a direct outline, but some shadow outline in here. So just doing stipple shading, creating some motion too, not doing everything in a straight line. Of course, I'm not going too hard on it, and I'm using pure black right here. And of course, I'm using a really fast hand motion just to create the illusion that there is something behind that is a bit darker than the face itself. Here, after placing most of the shading parts, I'm gonna go and do some more darker parts, really the last lines that I see that it needs to be a bit darker. So there are a bunch of hair right here that is really dark and has some darker tones, so I really want to get them in here. Again, I'm gonna do any extra details that are needed to add to the face. They really need to be a bit dark. I wouldn't over exaggerate on the details, but I want to get some parts in there so everything looks nice and looks like it is a real face. And of course, you really want to clean everything very well so you have a nice perspective on what you're doing, and you can see if anything is missing, if you can add anything else. Always check your reference too and compares what you did and what it is on the real image. So I'm about to clean everything here, then I'm about to check if it is enough or not. Again, as the reference, I didn't have that much details as I did. I really had to check my phone all the time, but I think the job worked very well. So now I'm about to use some foam right here. The foam has green soap in it, distilled water too. It's a part of 15% green soap, and then we have distilled water. This foam is really useful if you guys make YouTube videos or Instagram videos, TikToks. It kind of look good. You may see many artists using it, and it gives a nice effect to show off your work, to show off your tattoos. It really looks nice, and the cleaning is also satisfying. Of course, if you do a tattoo for so many hours, then you kind of like to clean it and to take all the stencil primer that is still under, or the stencil gimmick that is under the tattoo itself. You may not be able to see here on camera, but there are some noticeable blue lines in there. Actually on camera it doesn't look that much, but they have, so I'm really trying to clean everything to get those lines erased from the fake skin. Again, on fake skin the lines may not be that noticeable, but on real skin they will be really noticeable. But on real skin you really have to be careful how you wipe everything. So our tattoo is finished. Now you guys can take your videos, can take your photos, but before doing that I like to, of course, only on fake skin, I'm using a stencil remover. This thing smells super strong. If you guys don't know what it is, it's a stencil eraser and just removes the stencil primer that is in there. I mean the stencil gimmick, all those blue lines. It is really strong and smells really strong. It smells like ethanol, not alcohol, but really ethanol, because it just evaporates so fast, a bit like acetone, but more like alcohol. And it is really strong. If you smell this, well, it is very strong, but it works wonderfully, and it just gets rid of most of the blue lines that are still in there. Again, on camera you're not able to see that, but there were some lines in there, so you can get rid of them. I don't usually let it sit for too long, at least on fake skin, because it may mess up with the skin. On real skin I wouldn't recommend using it by any meaning. Again, I'm gonna rub some more alcohol to clean all the excess of ink that it's in there, and then we are good to go. Everything is looking good and the face is ready. Again, if you didn't clean everything, you can also use some vegetable oil. So here is a zoom of what I have done. You can see the stipple shading right there going along with the movement on the face, all the details on the neck too. Again, the ears, the eyes, the nose, the lips, the teeth, and the hair also looking good. Now if you guys enjoyed this video and this content, please don't forget to like. If you guys are still not subscribed, please subscribe, because more of 90% of you are still not subscribed, and that would mean the whole world for me if you guys could please subscribe. So again, if you have any questions, just comment down below, and if you guys can recognize who is the person here on this tattoo, please let me know in the comments if you guys recognize it or not. And if you guys recognize it, I will also like your videos and subscribe you. That will be the prize for today's video. Again guys, don't forget to like. That would allow that this video doesn't fall through the cracks of YouTube and doesn't get lost. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers!